Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your video update for December 6th, 2022. The main item I'm going to report on today is the bombshell that was released by Elon Musk in giving the Twitter files to journalist Matt Taibbi and releasing them for an investigation into what Twitter had been up to before Musk took it over. Now, what it shows is that it wasn't Russia which interfered in the 2020 election, and by implication, nor in the 2016 election. Taibbi released a first installment of his report, and it proved that Twitter executives, in consultation with leading members of the US intelligence community, engaged in, quote, selective censorship, unquote. Now, this relates to the Hunter Biden laptop story, which came out in the October 2020, right before the election, which demonstrated collusion of the Biden family in covering up corruption in Ukraine, minimally involving Hunter Biden's employment by Burisma Oil Company, but even much broader. Remember, Biden was the point man for the Obama administration in the 2014 February coup in Maidan Square, which brought down the Yanukovych government and put in the present regime in Ukraine. And this can explain a lot about US politics and also NATO politics. Now let's look at what's come out so far on the Twitter files. There's a character named Yoel Roth, who is the head of site integrity at Twitter, who had regular meetings with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Department of Homeland Security, and the FBI, this during the 2020 election, supposedly on election security matters. At that time, Twitter's top legal advisor was James Baker, who signed off on the censorship, saying caution is warranted on the Hunter Biden laptop story. In other words, it's okay to shut down reports on what's in the laptop. Now, who is James Baker? The name may be familiar to you, not the former Secretary of State, but the FBI General Counsel during the whole Russiagate story, when the FBI approved wiretapping. It approved warrants to the FISA court, which were based on what the FBI already knew was a fake dossier composed by former MI6 operative Christopher Steele. So Baker has a lot of explaining to do about his past, but he was involved in, he resigned from the FBI in May 2018, and in June 2020 became the legal counsel for Twitter. So he was at Twitter while this suppression was going on. Now, remember, Twitter shut down the Hunter Biden laptop story by shutting down the New York Post Twitter account and making it impossible to have access to it. After this was done, and this is before the November 2020 election, an open letter was circulated signed by more than 50 top former intelligence officials, including Russiagate figures like John Brennan, the corrupt CIA official, Michael Hayden, Mike Morrell, Leon Panetta, another former CIA director. And what they said in this letter is that the Hunter Biden laptop story has, quote, all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. In other words, it was done by Russia to defeat Biden in the election. And they ended their letter by saying, quote, it is high time that Russia stops interfering in our democracy, unquote. Now keep in mind, this is the very same network that not only was involved in Russiagate, but has been involved in shaping public opinion on US policies as the unilateral superpower, including dealings with Ukraine, Russia, and China. And these are the same officials who, over a 30-year period in the same agencies, were involved in the persecution of Lyndon LaRouche and his illegal prosecution and jailing. That is the FBI, the CIA, and so on. So what does this show? Well, it wasn't Russia that was involved in interference in the elections. It was the US intelligence community that interfered in 2016 and 17 with Russiagate, that interfered again in 2020 with the Hunter Biden laptop story being suppressed, but also was involved in sabotaging Lyndon LaRouche's many campaigns for president by the flow of slander and lies that were presented about him that were used to keep him out of national attention and to keep his ideas from the public. So drain the swamp, anyone? Well, what needs to be done, among other things, is to drop the indictments against Assange, the potential indictments against, I have this, let me go over this because I have this more thoroughly. Musk did a Twitter poll on Assange and Snowden. Should they be pardoned? Now, note that neither of them was ever convicted of anything. Assange has been accused of violating the Espionage Act, and the U.S. is still trying to extradite him. The extradition process was started under Trump and is continuing under Biden. And they essentially, if they can succeed in extraditing him, and meanwhile he's in a prison in very horrible conditions in London, but if they extradite him, the Espionage Act will not allow him to really present a defense, and they're talking about jailing him for 175 years. So Musk said, okay, let's have a poll. Should Assange and Snowden be pardoned? And as I said, neither of them have been convicted of anything. So pardon is not necessarily the right thing. But out of the 3.3 million votes in this poll, 80% favored a pardon. And I think if there would be an honest poll on the LaRouche case, you would have at least the same numbers concurring that he should be exonerated because he was a target of these same dirty intelligence networks. So this is quite useful that this is coming out. Now, let me just follow up on yesterday's story on Macron calling for a dialogue. I want to make sure, in case some people missed it, that while it's useful that he made this call, it's 12 months late. Did he not know about the sabotage of the Minsk Accord last December when Putin was demanding security guarantees for Russia? Of course he knew about it. He knew about it long before that. So this is a bit hypocritical of Macron, but if he follows through, it will be quite useful. But note that yesterday, one of Ukraine's negotiators said that there can be negotiations with Russia on their security concerns, provided, number one, they leave Ukraine, and number two, they voluntarily give up their nuclear weapons. In other words, forget it. There aren't going to be any negotiations. This is probably reinforced by Victoria Nuland, the witch of Maidan, who was in Ukraine yesterday, in Kiev, meeting with top Ukrainian officials, and she put out the absurd statement that the reason Putin hasn't used nuclear weapons yet in Ukraine is because the U.S. threatened him if he did. Victoria has a very big head on her shoulders. That is, she thinks that she's in charge of something. What she's in charge of is moving the world closer and closer to World War III. One other note on Ukraine, the president of Nigeria, Buhari, reports that weapons have shown up in the hands of Boko Haram that were from Ukraine. We've been warning that there's no tracking system to determine where the weapons and the money sent from the United States to Ukraine is ending up. Now it appears that some of those weapons have ended up in Nigeria, not unlike the NATO weapons that were sent into Libya that ended up in the hands of Syrian terrorists after the 2011 destruction of the Libyan government. Now, in the midst of these developments and more, there's something you're not supposed to be hearing about, which are the moves toward a new financial transaction system outside of the control of the City of London and Wall Street. There's quite a bit of momentum on this in this direction, which includes many nations of the global south. That includes the BRICS countries, and BRICS is in an expansionary mode beyond Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. A number of other countries have applied for membership. The European or the Eurasian Economic Forum, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, all of them are moving toward establishing a financial system not under the control of the unipolar order of Wall Street and the City of London. This is crucial, and we'll have more on this in the next days, as this is one of the central features of Helga Zepp-LaRouche's call for a new financial and security architecture. So there's a lot of motion going on. Will you hear about it? Well, probably not so much in the mainstream media. That's why it's important that you go to the LaRouche Organization site, the Schiller Institute site, and share our videos and share our articles. I have a new article up on the whole question of what's the truth about the situation on the ground in Ukraine. You can get that at my blog page at thelaroucheorganization.com. See you tomorrow.